What if the stars we adored in their golden years were hiding monstrous secrets? Beneath the smiles and iconic roles lay lives far darker than anyone could have imagined. How did Hollywood's brightest faces become twisted by scandal, addiction, and betrayal? In this video, we reveal the chilling truths of 15 stars whose lives were far more sinister than their glamorous personas. You won't believe who was hiding the darkest secrets of them all. Stay tuned. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was the epitome of Hollywood's tough guy image, but his personal life was a dark contradiction. A story that haunts his legacy involves a young Natalie Wood and an alleged incident between them. While the details remain murky, the rumors have never completely gone away, and it wasn't until after his death that the whispers reached a larger audience. No one ever really talked about it during his lifetime. It was Hollywood, after all, where the perfect public face often hid the deepest flaws. Despite being a beloved legend, this dark chapter forever stains his otherwise impeccable career. It's hard to forget that even the brightest stars have skeletons in their closets. Loretta Young. Loretta Young was Hollywood's darling, but her pristine image hid a shocking truth. She secretly had a daughter with Clark Gable, which, at the time, could have destroyed her reputation. So, what did she do? She staged an elaborate adoption by flying to Europe for months, only to return claiming she had adopted her own child. The media bought it, but in reality, she had simply hidden her affair and pregnancy to protect her career. Young's public life was a lie. He'd carefully curated to maintain her perfect image, but the truth about her secret daughter could never be completely buried. Gloria Grahame. Gloria Grahame's life was as wild as the characters she played on screen. She married director Nicholas Ray, but things quickly fell apart when he found her in bed with his 13-year-old son. The scandal didn't end there. Grahame shockingly went on to marry that same stepson years later. This bizarre and disturbing twist shattered her reputation in Hollywood. Once a rising star, she became the subject of one of Hollywood's most notorious and uncomfortable scandals, forever remembered for her shocking personal choices. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead didn't just break the rules, she obliterated them with a grin. Hollywood's wild child, she lived a life of unapologetic chaos. Her antics? Legendary. Cocaine use? No secret. Sexual relationships with both men and women? Just part of the party. Bankhead wasn't content with being a star. She wanted to be the biggest personality in the room, and she made sure she was. Her fame was built on scandal, with a relentless pursuit of pleasure and self-destruction that shocked even the most liberal-minded of her peers. She once said she only took a role in Devil and the Deep because she wanted to sleep with her co-star. Bankhead was notorious for speaking her mind, not caring about decorum or reputation, and that made her a fascinating figure, until her antics started catching up with her. Hollywood loved its stars to be perfect, but Tallulah wasn't having any of that. She wore her flaws like a badge of honor, making her both infamous and unforgettable. A star, that yes, but one whose life was a constant whirlwind of outrageous behavior that left everyone wondering if she was simply a product of Hollywood excess or a woman out of control. Fatty Arbuckle. Fatty Arbuckle's career in Hollywood came crashing down in the blink of an eye, a classic case of scandal erasing a star's once bright future. In 1921, the beloved comedic actor was accused of manslaughter after the mysterious death of actress Virginia Rappe. The case was sensationalized, with lurid details painting Arbuckle as a monster. Despite being acquitted, the damage was done. His name was tarnished, his career ruined. Hollywood turned its back on him, and the trial's disgusting publicity followed him to his grave. The scandal was like a bombshell that rocked the foundations of Hollywood's image. Arbuckle, once one of the highest-paid actors, never fully recovered. The public's hunger for juicy details didn't just destroy his reputation. It changed how stars would be protected from scandal in the future. But Arbuckle wasn't the only one who suffered. The entire entertainment industry was left questioning how quickly a hero could be torn down. His story is a painful reminder of how fame can be a fragile thing, and how the weight of scandal can crush a legacy almost overnight. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, the ultimate icon of beauty and innocence, was far more troubled than the public ever knew. Beneath her platinum blonde hair and dazzling smile, Monroe was constantly battling loneliness, self-doubt, and addiction. Her life seemed like one long string of failed marriages and heartbreak, but what wasn't talked about in the headlines were the secrets she kept hidden. She had multiple secret abortions to avoid public scrutiny and maintain her Hollywood status. Her affairs with both John and Robert Kennedy were the subject of whispers, but no one truly knew the depth of her pain. Monroe's mental health struggles were kept under wraps by the studios, who saw her as nothing more than a money-making machine. Her vulnerability was both her strength and her downfall. Her tragic death, ruled as an overdose, left questions that still haven't been answered to this day. Was it really an accident? Or was Monroe's story one of a woman trapped in a world that used her until she broke? What we saw on screen was only a glimpse of the woman behind the persona. Hollywood loved her, but they failed her. And in the end, Monroe's beauty couldn't save her from the darkness that followed her every step. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was fierce, not just in her roles, but in real life too. She wasn't the kind of star who played nice, and her rivalry with Joan Crawford was legendary, transforming into a public battle of egos that would define their careers. But Bette's fierceness didn't stop with the acting world. Her daughter, B.D. Hyman, wrote a memoir that exposed the ugly truth behind Davis's iron grip on her family. Bette wasn't just controlling, she was ruthless. B.D. described her as a heavy-drinking, emotionally abusive mother who molded her in her own image while stifling her every attempt at independence. Bette wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature, and her personal life reflected that intensity. Her battle with Joan Crawford, famously portrayed in Feud, Bette and Joan, wasn't just about career rivalry. It was personal, and both stars knew the power of public image, and their feud served as an extension of their war over control, fame, and, ultimately, who would remain relevant. Bette Davis thrived on drama, and when the cameras stopped rolling, it continued. But her tough exterior couldn't shield her from the fallout, especially when her own family turned on her in a very public way. Davis's legacy is marred by both the brilliant roles she left behind and the toxicity that accompanied her fierce, uncompromising personality. In the end, she may have been the queen of Hollywood, but the cost was steep, especially for those closest to her. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was one of Hollywood's brightest young stars, a sensitive, tortured soul whose real-life pain mirrored his on-screen performances. In 1956, a horrific car accident left Clift with severe facial injuries, but it was his mental state that really suffered. Once a strikingly handsome, sensitive leading man, Clift's life spiraled after the crash. The physical damage was just the beginning. He turned to alcohol and drugs to cope, and his addiction became so severe that Hollywood insiders referred to his decline as the longest suicide in Hollywood history. His career, which had been skyrocketing, faltered. The once promising leading man was now a tragic figure who could no longer escape the consequences of his own demons. It's easy to forget, looking at his early films, how bright his star was. But by the time he died, Clift was unrecognizable, both physically and emotionally. He became a symbol of Hollywood's darker side, the price of fame, the pressures of being a star, and the inevitable self-destruction that came with it. He wasn't just battling his addiction. He was battling an industry that was more than willing to chew him up and spit him out. Clift's story is a tragic one, a reminder of how Hollywood's golden image doesn't always match the dark reality lurking behind the scenes. Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman was Hollywood's golden girl, a virtuous, luminous star who captivated audiences with her beauty and grace. But in 1949, her life took a dramatic turn when she had an affair with Italian director Roberto Rossellini, who was already married. The scandal was immediate and brutal. It wasn't just the affair that caused the uproar. It was the fact that she was publicly denounced by U.S. senators, who even called her a powerful influence for evil. The scandal shattered her image as the virtuous, or untouchable star, and Hollywood turned its back on her. At the time, the affair was seen as not just a personal betrayal, but a moral one, especially in the highly conservative post-war era. For a time, it seemed like her career was over. The public shaming was so intense that she even considered leaving Hollywood for good. But Ingrid, ever resilient, did just the opposite. She returned to Europe, made films with Rossellini, and rebuilt her career on her own terms. She won 2 Academy Awards later in her life, proving that even Hollywood's most untouchable stars can fall from grace, only to rise again. But the cost of her fall was high, and the whispers about her affair would follow her for the rest of her career. The scandal that shattered her pristine image was a reminder that in Hollywood, the price of being too human can be steep. Clark Gable. Clark Gable was the definition of a Hollywood legend, the epitome of leading man charm and masculinity. But behind that iconic smile and rugged persona, there was a secret that Hollywood wasn't ready to reveal. Gable fathered a daughter, Judy Lewis, with actress Loretta Young, a child he never publicly acknowledged. At the time, the relationship was a well-kept secret, one that could have destroyed both of their careers if it ever came to light. To keep the scandal from surfacing, Young went to extraordinary lengths to hide her pregnancy, even going so far as to fabricate an adoption story. She left for Europe for months, only to return claiming she had adopted her own daughter. Gable, in his typically silent way, never once acknowledged his paternity publicly. But the whispers of their affair and the birth of their child spread behind closed doors, and the truth was never fully buried. Though Gable would go on to marry and have children, his legacy would forever be tarnished by this hidden chapter. Gable was Hollywood royalty, the king of the screen, but even he wasn't immune to the demands of a public image that often required stars to bury the most inconvenient of truths. His daughter, Judy Lewis, would only discover the truth about her father's identity years later, and the revelation left a stain on Gable's otherwise pristine reputation. In the end, even the greatest stars have their skeletons. Some just hide them better than others. Lana Turner. Lana Turner was the ultimate Hollywood diva, a glamorous and tragic figure whose life seemed to rival the melodramas she starred in. But one particular tragedy overshadowed them all: the death of her boyfriend, mobster Johnny Stompanato, in 1958. It was a night that would change Turner's life forever. Stompanato, abusive and violent, was stabbed to death by Turner's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, in what was later ruled as a case of self-defense. But the tragedy didn't end there. Lana Turner, the star of The Postman Always Rings Twice, found herself caught in a media storm that threatened to undo her career. The public was obsessed with the shocking violence that had unfolded behind the closed doors of one of Hollywood's most glamorous households. But there were darker, more personal tragedies that marked Turner's life beyond Stompanato's death. Turner was forced to undergo multiple abortions, some reportedly performed without anesthesia, by the studios who wanted to keep her looking young and fit for her roles. Hollywood, ever the machine, wasn't kind to the women who were its stars. Turner's personal and professional lives were controlled and manipulated by an industry that treated her as a commodity. Her daughter's tragic act of violence, coupled with the forced sacrifices Turner made for her career, highlighted the extreme lengths to which stars had to go to maintain their stardom. Turner's story isn't just one of fame. It's a cautionary tale about the price of beauty, success, and survival in a ruthless industry. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, the beloved little tramp who made the world laugh, had a personal life that was far darker than his on-screen persona. His marriage to his second wife, Loretta Gray, became a public scandal. She was just 16 years old when they tied the knot, and the age gap, along with the circumstances of their marriage, became a point of great controversy. But it wasn't just his choice of partner that raised eyebrows. It was Chaplin's increasingly strange behavior. Chaplin was known for his obsession with young women, a pattern that only worsened as his fame grew. His divorce from Loretta Gray was a bitter, public affair, with accusations of cruelty and manipulation from both sides. His behavior behind the scenes painted a picture of a man who, despite his image as a compassionate and humorous figure, struggled with deep personal demons. Chaplin's obsessions didn't stop with his marriages. He was also a notorious womanizer, and rumors about his inappropriate relationships with young women would haunt him throughout his life. Hollywood, which had once embraced Chaplin as its darling, eventually turned its back on him when his personal life became too much of a liability. His scandalous behavior led to his exile from the United States during the McCarthy era, and his reputation, once shining, was left tarnished by the darkness of his personal choices. Chaplin's story is a powerful reminder that even the brightest stars often have the darkest secrets. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn's life was like one of his swashbuckling adventures, full of excitement, danger, and dark secrets. Known for his daring roles and irresistible charm, Flynn's off-screen persona was just as wild as the characters he portrayed. But beneath the bravado was a man who lived a life of scandal. In the early 1940s, Flynn was accused of statutory rape, a case that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Although he was acquitted, the damage to his reputation was severe. He was no longer seen as just the debonair leading man, but as a man whose private life was full of turmoil. And that was just the beginning of his downward spiral. Flynn's real-life adventures were far from heroic. His personal life was a chaotic mix of alcohol, legal troubles, and relationships with women that left a trail of heartbreak. His reputation was that of a reckless, self-destructive playboy, someone who burned through his fame and fortune at an alarming rate. Hollywood, once his playground, soon became a place where his behavior was tolerated, but never truly accepted. Flynn's legacy is complicated. He was one of the most popular and highest-paid stars of his time. Yet his personal flaws ultimately overshadowed his screen achievements. The trial, his wild lifestyle, and his public persona created an image of a man who couldn't escape his own demons. Despite his undeniable talent and charm, Flynn's life was proof that the price of fame could be steep, and for him, it was a constant battle between his public image and his personal chaos. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was Hollywood royalty, a star whose fierce on-screen presence was matched only by her infamous off-screen persona. Crawford's public image was one of grace, class, and strength. But behind closed doors, she was anything but the perfect matron. Her daughter Christina would go on to expose Joan's cruel, abusive behavior in the memoir Mommy Dearest, which described physical and emotional abuse, including the infamous wire hangers incident. The details of their relationship painted Joan as a woman who was cold, controlling, and relentless in her pursuit of perfection, not just in her career, but in her family life as well. Joan's story was filled with scandal, but perhaps the darkest chapter was her alleged involvement in stag films early in her career. These adult films, reportedly suppressed by the studio with a hefty payment, were part of a life that Joan desperately tried to bury. Joan Crawford was a woman who demanded to be adored, but in her quest for control and perfection, she alienated those closest to her. The image she cultivated for decades, of a dignified, hard-working actress, was a far cry from the woman Christina would later describe in her memoir. Joan's reign as Hollywood's queen ended in a public unraveling, with her reputation forever tainted by the accusations and scandals that became impossible to ignore. The harshest truth? She wasn't just a star of Hollywood. She was a product of its darkest side. Judy Garland. Judy Garland was the embodiment of Hollywood's golden era, a radiant talent, beloved by millions for her unforgettable performance as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. But the tragedy of Judy's life was that the magic of the screen couldn't shield her from the cruelty of Hollywood behind the scenes. Forced by MGM to maintain a grueling schedule, Garland was pushed to her limits. To keep up with her exhausting workload and maintain her slim figure, she was reportedly given amphetamines during the day and sleeping pills at night. By the age of 18, she was living on a diet of black coffee, chicken soup, and 80 cigarettes a day. The studio didn't just exploit her talent. They controlled her every move, treating her like a commodity instead of a person. What we saw on screen was the image of an innocent, youthful star. But the reality was far darker. Garland's personal life was marked by broken marriages, constant battles with addiction, and a profound sense of loneliness. The pressure to maintain her stardom led to a series of breakdowns, and by the time she died at the age of 47, Judy's career had long been overshadowed by the toll Hollywood had taken on her mental and physical health. Her tragic story is a stark reminder of how the cost of fame, particularly in Hollywood's golden age, could destroy even the brightest stars. These 15 stars may have dazzled on screen, but their real lives were filled with scandal, heartbreak, and dark secrets. Hollywood's golden era wasn't just about glitz and glamour. It was about the hidden costs of fame. Their stories show that even the brightest lights cast long shadows. Which revelation shocked you the most? Drop a comment, like, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's hidden truths.